Today, the FIFA World Cup returns. The biggest tournament in football is finally here, and the very first match is a rematch 16 years in the making. Mexico, South Africa, Estadio Azteca. Tens of thousands inside the stadium, millions watching around the world. And a story that began in Johannesburg in 2010 is about to continue in Mexico City. Before the first whistle blows, here are 5 incredible facts that make this opening match unlike any other in World Cup history. Fact number 1. This is the only World Cup opening match rematch ever. Back in 2010, when South Africa became the first African nation to host the FIFA World Cup, the tournament began with South Africa against Mexico. The match ended 1-1. Today, 16 years later, the exact same nations meet again in the exact same setting, the opening match of a FIFA World Cup. The teams have changed. The players have changed. The world has changed. But somehow, football has brought these two countries together once more on opening night. Nothing like this has ever happened before in World Cup history. Fact number 2. One man connects both matches. Guillermo Ochoa. The legendary Mexican goalkeeper is the only player from either country to be part of both the 2010 and 2026 World Cup squads. Think about that. Every other player who featured in that famous opener has retired, moved on, or disappeared from the international stage. But Ochoa is still here. He witnessed Saifu Tshabalala's unforgettable goal. He witnessed Rafael Marquez's equalizer. And 16 years later, he remains part of Mexico's World Cup journey. He may not start tonight, but his presence alone is a reminder of just how much time has passed between these two historic matches. Fact number 3. The South African coach is completing a remarkable full circle. Hugo Broos has already announced that this tournament will be his final chapter in international football. And fittingly, it ends in Mexico. 40 years ago, Broos played in his final World Cup as a player in Mexico. Now, 4 decades later, he returns to the same country for what could be the final World Cup match of his career as a coach. 40 years. One country. One final appearance on football's biggest stage. Sometimes football creates stories that feel too perfect to be real. Fact number 4. The stadium itself is part of football mythology. Estadio Azteca is not just a venue. It is one of the most famous stadiums ever built. This is where Pelé lifted the World Cup. This is where Diego Maradona produced 2 of the most famous moments in football history. And today, another chapter will be written inside these legendary walls. The atmosphere promises to be unforgettable. A packed stadium, a global audience, and an opening ceremony featuring some of the biggest names in music. Before a ball is even kicked, the world will be watching Mexico City. Because when football arrives at Azteca, history is never far away. And finally, fact number 5. One of these nations is still chasing a dream that has never been achieved. For the 3rd time, the World Cup has arrived on Mexican soil. Yet despite all their football tradition, Mexico have never won the tournament and have never reached a World Cup semifinal. South Africa, meanwhile, are still searching for their first appearance beyond the group stage. Different histories, different journeys, but the same ambition: to finally break through. Mexico arrive with momentum, confidence, and the backing of a passionate home crowd. South Africa arrive with belief, determination, and the opportunity to shock the football world. 16 years after their first World Cup opener together, they meet again. Same occasion, same pressure, same dream. And this time, One of them will take the first step toward writing a new chapter in football history. The 2026 FIFA World Cup begins tonight. What's your prediction? Can Mexico finally make home advantage count? Or will South Africa produce another unforgettable opening night story? Let us know in the comments, and subscribe for complete coverage of every major story from the 2026 FIFA World Cup.